Hello, and welcome to Protecting Your Social Media from Hackers. My name's Dante St James. This is going to be a brief but very comprehensive look at the things you can do to help prevent the hacking of your social media properties, particularly when we're looking at, I suppose, the Facebook end of the bargain. This is where most of the hacks seem to happen, but you might be surprised some other areas that get hacked as well. Let's share that screen and get running. A quote here from Stéphane Napo, who's the global head of information security for Société Générale International Banking, which is a massive French bank. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and just a few minutes of cyber incident to absolutely ruin it. Isn't that true? I've certainly had that happen to me in the past. What we'll cover today is the impact of hackers on social media, how and why it happens to happen. I'm going to take a little bit of a look at experiences I've had with cybersecurity myself, with things being going horribly amiss, both in websites and in social media, and a little bit about what you can do to make sure you're doing everything you can to secure your social media properties. First up, though, this is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program. Is an initiative of the Australian government delivered in Queensland by Regional Development Australia, Brisbane, and Treaty Business Consulting in the Northern Territory. You can watch this later on through my own YouTube channel. Just look for my name, Dante St James. I've got lots of stuff coming up there, and even after this month, I'll continue to have lots of stuff going up there. But you can also search for my own and a lot of other people's material through Business Station on YouTube. They put up every single one of these webinars and online workshops, so you can watch those later as well. A bit about me, my previous education has been through the University of New South Wales, Sydney, which was in marketing and business information systems, and an actual master's in business information systems. Because I'm a bit of an overachiever like that, I went off and did a whole bunch of certifications through the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the UK, remotely. I didn't go to the UK for that. It would be way too expensive. But I've also done my cybersecurity attainment through TAFE New South Wales and several other what I call micro-credentials, working with Facebook's lead trainer program globally and the community trainers network here in Australia and New Zealand, as well as being a digital marketing associate, media planning professional, and as of Sunday, also a creative strategist and marketing scientist as well, which is really fancy name for basically getting an exam right. Google's Digital Springboard program, I do deliver stuff on that for digital literacy, particularly with small businesses and older Australians, as well as the DB connected ASBAS and NICE programs through the Australian government. Excuse me. Now, I will warn you up front now, cybersecurity is a very complex topic. So I'm not going to go into the absolute depths of all cybersecurity psychology and the human factor cybersecurity factors that are really quite massive when it comes to it. We're not going to look at anything technical. This is completely a general overview only, and more about what you can do to ensure that your properties aren't hacked. And you'll be surprised how easily that happens. The impact, excuse me, let me just wet my throat. Coffee fixes everything, doesn't it? The impact of cybersecurity problems on social media in particular has had a massive impact in Australia and continues with 50 hacked profiles a day in Australia. When you go completely international with that, you're in the terms of like the thousands of hacked profiles every day in Facebook. But surprisingly, TikTok is taking out the king at the moment. It's the hot new place to be. And of course, people who are on TikTok are not particularly safe with their usernames and logins and all that sort of thing. So there's 77 hacked profiles per day in Australia from just TikTok, and another 42 just on Instagram. So this is definitely a thing that happens, and it's having a massive impact in Australia. So much so that we can say that $170 million in lost revenue to small businesses every year, just from hacking of social media profiles. Now, it's well into the billions when it comes to hacking issues, when it goes to all sorts of digital stuff. But for just social media, $170 million in lost revenue to small businesses. That's people like you and I, people who own small businesses and are just going sort of struggling day to day, and suddenly one of our greatest sales channels, let's say Facebook, is completely ripped from us, and we cannot access it. We cannot continue to do business through there, and it really does impact our businesses. And just in the last 6 months, the amount of small businesses around Australia who've been suffering. As a gym owner in Melbourne, for instance, couldn't do regular gym stuff, so he was doing a lot of online courses and trying to sell those. And then at some point, someone hacked his account, got in and caused problems with the ads account, so that he couldn't use it and couldn't advertise his courses. He went from being able to make a few $100s a day just on course sales and just on virtual PT events, and then suddenly ripped away completely nothing. And he was obviously completely distraught about that, because there was no way for him to be able to make money through his regular business activity. So the impact happens through all kinds of social media and also non-social media properties as well. Facebook is probably the most obvious one that we see, because it's something that we do a lot of business through. But a lot of us are using YouTube as well. So YouTube is becoming a really big factor in online advertising, because it's only video. It's relatively low cost compared to Google ads, and it's something which there's as many people on YouTube as there are on Facebook. So it's one of those massive places for getting some kind of impact in advertising. TikTok, we've talked about that. It's the most hacked of all of them every day. Also, bearing in mind that TikTok accounts can very, very be quickly spun up for all sorts of things, just like Twitter accounts. There's not a lot of security going into the verification of the person who's raising those accounts. So those hacked accounts are certainly a little bit overblown by the fact that there's more accounts that are actually not used for anything on TikTok than any other network. Instagram then is very similar to Facebook. It has a similar kind of thing that people go into, but because we probably always started having Instagram and Facebook as separate things rather than linking them together more recently, then Instagram also can be affected. LinkedIn is actually the one place where I think there can be such a massive impact on your reputation when someone takes over your LinkedIn account and starts posting inappropriate stuff in there. That's what Stefan was talking about before, where it can take you 20 years to build up this big profile. I've been active on LinkedIn probably since about 2010, and honestly, that's now 11 years of activity and sowing that field and farming that and hoping that I can get something out of it, only to have it blown in 2021 because of some sort of poor cybersecurity practices. And this is what they are. They're poor cybersecurity practices. And we'll have a look at those shortly as well. Pinterest is another one. As that continues to rise steadily, particularly in demographics where people are looking for renovations, inspiration, trying to get, so it's transforming their lives, that kind of thing. Pinterest continues to be a very big name in this sector. But there's one thing that all of these accounts have in common. And it's not that they're all social media. It's that they all use email as the way for you to sign up and as the way for you to verify who you are. And email is the number one way that the hackers get into your accounts and do the damage that they do. So what can be accessed via email that makes it so easy for them to do? Well, number one thing is that all your contacts are in there. So if someone has got into your email at some point, it's probably because they got into one of your friends' email or a colleague's email first, got your contact, and you became part of an email list of places for them to try. Email is also where you share passwords. So quite often you'll send a password off to a friend, to a colleague, to someone, your mother, your father, your grandma. You'll send off lots of different things like passwords. And usually those emails where you've sent your password off to someone are really easily described as, here you go, grandma, here's my password. You can just search any of these email platforms once you're in and find where passwords are being shared. So it's not a hard thing for someone to find those passwords. In fact, it's even easier for them to then go, well, now I've got access to your email. I can reset your social media passwords and lock you out of them. And that's the truly scary thing. This is where most of the activity happens in cybersecurity for small businesses now. It's not, hackers trying to get into the mainframe of the bank to get your money out of your bank account. It's literally getting into your email and getting access to everything. Because think about it, your business's email contains everything. It's got everything in there. And if you haven't secured your email appropriately, then you're going to have some problems. And what those problems can be is that they used a very common password to get into your account, or they use what we call social engineering to figure it out. And that's something we'll look at next. And they actually might have even had that access for many, many years before now. So when they use common password, here are the top 10 passwords in the world. If you've got any of those, you're in big, big trouble, because it's only a matter of time before you are hacked. But then you think about the different variations. There's like admin 123, password 1, password hash 1 2 3 4 5 6, and then the variations around that. I don't know what Semha is. I'd say it's probably like in another language. 1111111, or like, you know, the Bluetooth password for the car connection is always 0000. It's the most easily hacked thing on the planet. But they think, oh, what can they get into? They really can only get into your radio and transmit something, can't they? Really? Picture 1, anything with a 1. We think that we're being clever by putting a hash or a 1 at the end of our name, or a set of numbers, or a date of birth, or using something like you know, something that can be easily reverse engineered back to who you are and what's present in your social media. And then we call that one social engineering. So it's looking at your account and saying, oh, look, you're a mother who's always posting about your son Brandon, or Brooke, or Jason, or Taylor. And then you just sort of, it doesn't take much to work out that most passwords involved with mums and dads tend to be directed around their children, their wives, their husbands, or people that they know. So if I can find out what your husband's name is, or what your wife's name is, or what your boyfriend or girlfriend's name, what your kids' names are, chances are, yeah, in a case of about 60% of the time, that your passwords will involve their name in it somewhere. So that's one of the probably the biggest way that they're getting in now. If you're not using a very common password, you're using ones that I can work out just by looking at what's public on your social media. And if you think, oh, no one would look at that to get in there, they don't have to. They've got bots that do this for you. So in automated computer scripts that go out and search all this stuff for them. They don't have to manually sit there and reverse engineer this stuff. It just looks through and sees what things come up. What are the friends that are always coming up in your comments? And then use those, particularly if they're associated with the word mum or son or daughter or anything like that. They'll be able to pick that up and go, yep, we know what your password is now. And it's usually around about the dates that they were born. So quite often, like the Jason 1992 that's been mentioned there is a very common one, because quite often we just go, okay, Brandon was born in 1992, so it's Brandon 92 or Brandon 1992. And these pieces of information are incredibly easy for automated computer scripts to go and find. So just by removing that out of your email, you're reducing your chances by 85% of being hacked, just by changing a password to something that is not obvious. I use LastPass, which is a password manager that handles all my passwords. And every single place that I log into has about 64 characters that it uses. Now, you'll never be able to guess by any social engineering what my LastPass account ID is. And even if you did by some chance do that, you have to then go through the Authenticator app on one of my phones, not all of my phones, but one of my phones, that brings up a 6-digit password that you then have to enter in order to still get in. So I put so many iron gates in front of myself these days that good luck trying to work out what my passwords are, because you're not going to find them. And then there's also, if it's not our dogs, it's our cats or our favorite pets. Or the suburb that we're in, or the suburb we grew up in. Quite often we'll use, suburb IDs, like maybe my case, it might be Berrima 0828 as a password, because that happened to be where I was at the time, or where I work, or where I live, or something like that. Or in your case, it could be, I don't know, let's look at Pimpama 08, what is it in Pimpama 4208 or something like that for in Queensland. So you've got that easily be able to be worked out of who you are, where you are. Then try that. And then remember, it's not a person sitting here, lovingly putting all these details in. This is an automated bot that's going and just scraping information from social media profiles and whatever it can find on Google. And quite often it's going to find that you've got a password that either is on the common passwords list. There's about a top 200 of them, which account for over 90% of the passwords on the planet, which is just terrifying. And then the social engineering takes the next 15% of passwords on the planet. People like me who go to extreme lengths to make sure we do not have guessable passwords and have 2 and 3 factors of authentication to get through. We're about 5% of users on the internet, and we never get hacked because it's just too much hard work. They'll go for the easy stuff, the low-hanging fruit instead. And then there's also the fact that some of you may have been in security lists for many, many years. For instance, if you go to, I should actually give you the thing in the chat that's called, have I been pwned? So have I been, no, not there. Sorry, I'll just type this in for you so you've got it. And you can put in there whether your email address has been, come up in a data breach. So I'll just put it into the chat. So if you see that in the chat, go there and have a look and put your email address in, or any of the email addresses you use for your business, and it'll show you what data breaches you may have shown up in. So for instance, one I know I've shown up in before was from Under Armour, and it's because I used to have an app on my phone that had all the things I eat. I put in what I'd eat and I do the exercise I've done, so I'd work out what my caloric intake and outtake was, and when I was fit and very into that kind of stuff. Now, I haven't used that since 2015, but even in 2021 I still have my email address, which is appearing in that list that was actually pulled out from people in Under Armour. So it pulled out both my username, my password, and my email address. Now, that password at the time was used for almost everything that I did. So there was a real danger that came up. So I had to, at the time, and it was a bit of a hassle, change every password I had that used that particular password and username or email combination. It's secure now, but it still comes up. Every time I go to have I been pwned, I see there's definitely a place where it reminds me of just how easily big lists of email addresses come out. Carnival Cruises this year was breached in Australia as far as getting people to their personal details. Now, getting those personal details may not contain a password, but it contains enough information about you that the password hackers can actually work that out through a script and just run through this email address, this location where they are, this phone number, this email, this these personal details marrying up. Here's a bunch of likely passwords that they probably have. LinkedIn's had breaches this year, just the one that happened actually back quite a few years, but it's popped up again this year in use. And NAP had a big breach as well that's popped up again this year. So those sources of breaches, it's worth going and looking, seeing what you've actually had in terms of breaches, because everyone from Audi to credit checking agencies, they're all being breached at some point. Most banks have been breached. Most social media platforms have been breached. So many places have been breached that it's actually worth you taking time to look at that site, have I been pwned, and then actually find out where you've appeared. So I've just run one of my email addresses and says I've not appeared in any breaches. If I run a quick another version of another email address that I've got, it'll say, oh, yep, I've actually showed up in some. I've showed up in someone Elasticsearch holding, like, I don't even know where that is, like how I would have been in that, but I am in that. Promo, a video marketing video maker that I joined many, many years ago, actually had a password and an email address in it. So I don't use that email address and password combination anymore because of that reason. And then Pixlr is an online version of something like Photoshop. So you go in there and use it as a designer for a free online version of something like Photoshop, where you go and update photos and build graphics, that sort of thing. I haven't used it in years, but I was actually in one of those breaches. And yes, email addresses and passwords and even social media profile information was included in that breach as well. So I've actually gone to Pixlr, changed my password quite a couple of years ago, actually. I also changed my password on promo video as well, just to make sure that nobody could get in there using that particular username and password combination. It's pretty scary, isn't it? All this stuff that's out there. So why do these people do this? Like, what honestly is up with them? Like, what do they get out of this? Well, they cause disruption to start with. Some people are based on state-owned actors, which they basically people from North Korea or Russia that are paid by the government sort of secretly to cause disruption in other countries. And they do that instead of dropping bombs, they do it by constantly hacking people and causing grief with people, that causes dissent, that causes people to blame their governments, and then destabilizes countries and governments. This cyber warfare is a very real thing. It goes on every day. It's why there was such a big outcry about Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election in America. There's been no sort of indication that we've had massive external influence in our elections here in Australia, but we have cybersecurity incidents all the time. And since Australia and China have been having a bit of a trade war, there's been a massive increase in cybersecurity and cyber warfare incidents coming from what we believe is from mainland China. So it's not like this is a thing that this makes really sexy news or somehow makes politicians give them someone to blame like China. This thing actually happens. We do have online enemies, and they're not always who we think they are. They could be any country, any sort of state that's got an issue with us in Australia will cause that disruption. There's also the mischief factor. Sometimes people just want to cause mischief. They just want to know and hear news stories that involve something that they did, something that they caused. They get very proud by saying, I did that. I caused that massive breach that caused all these problems for people. And they feel good. It's a sense of achievement. It's like playing a game that they just won. The money factor is more so, it's less about getting in and getting your money and more about using your following and your social media profiles to go in and make money from running ads, usually, to be honest, or running posts through your Facebook pages that allow them to point to scams. And it will take them, even if it takes them only an hour before Facebook finds out who they are and they wipe them out, that wipes you out forever. So once you've been associated with that, your profile, your page, your ad account, then all that stuff will be taken away from you. And there's a very good reason why that happens. And I'll cover that in a second too. Now, my own story when it comes to cybersecurity has had a few little colorful incidents in the past. The first one was on Christmas Day in 2008. And I was, at the time, I was living in Tasmania, in Hobart, but I was on the holidays for Christmas in Noosa, in Queensland. And I got this call on Christmas Day from a colleague saying, hey, we've had one of our websites hacked by a Turkish hacker group. And so I went on there and looked at it and I went, oh crap, okay. And then as we get looking around the rest of the network of websites, we had about 47 of them at the time. Every single one had been hacked by this same Turkish group, claiming that they are, having a jihad war and all that kind of thing. And they're targeting media properties. And, if you want to do it, they had a ransom against it. So they said, okay, we've got a ransom. You're going to be able to have to pay this to us to get your sites back online. So that consequently ruined my Christmas Day. I spent the rest of the day and late into the night on Christmas night and Boxing Day as well, fixing these websites thankfully we had lots of backups. So we didn't lose any data, but it did sort of let us know that on that Joomla, which is the logo you can see there, Joomla had some security vulnerabilities at the time that we weren't aware of because we hadn't really taken cybersecurity particularly seriously back then. This is 2008. Like, cybersecurity wasn't even a word. I don't think that had been invented. So we learned very quickly that keeping your software on your website up to date was really important. And I never had another Christmas Day ruined again. In fact, we never had, since 2008 until I left that company in 2016, another cybersecurity incident at all on those websites. It was so important that we prioritized it after that massive loss, that we had to go back and do it again. Now, that's then not the only incident. Again, it popped up for me in April 14, 2010. I only know this because I actually, I diarize everything in my Google Calendar. And so I've got this long history of when incidents occurred, and I give them anniversaries just to remind me. Not because I'm a masochist and I want to remind myself of some of my greatest failures, but because it's a reminder to me that this happened before. These kind of things can happen again if I don't keep my eye on the ball. So on April 14, 2010, my Twitter account was taken over by Russian hackers. because they identify themselves as Russian and hackers who took it over. And so my Dante St James user on Twitter. So even if I go to Twitter now, twitter.com/Dante St James, I think the account is still there, but I'm locked out of it. I can't get back into it because someone had taken it over at some point and changed it. So the account was actually suspended, and that's because it started posting a lot of stuff, based upon, stuff that you're not supposed to post on social media properties. So that account was suspended, and I had to set up a new one later on, which was, I think it was I am Dante St James. And I think a couple of years later, I haven't been able to get back into that one. And not that I really matter that much because I haven't really done anything on there. But that was all based around the fact that I had changed my phone number, but not updated that with Twitter. So I've not been able to verify my way back in. That said, though, there is another version of my account, which is under Clickstarter AU, which I can get into. And that's my primary Twitter account as well. So it did affect me a little bit, not hugely, but it certainly, made it really, really annoying that I couldn't get into my own account. Not because of anything bad that happened with the hackers, but I just had a very easy to use password at the time. And that was back in 2014. Now, since then, in June 16, 2015, my Facebook account was hacked. And what they did, they went to a lot of trouble with this. They basically had got into my email, my Gmail at the time, which got into my Google Drive. And in my Google Drive, I had copies of my birth certificate, my passport, my driver's license, all that stuff. And these people, once they got in, took over my Facebook account, with which I had since 2008. So what, nearly 7 years. And in there was holidays had gone on. I'd use it to store all of my photos from when I went to America in 2014. There was so many things that were in there that were so important to me, and lots of memories all completely lost. These guys were able to, because they got into my Google Drive, were able to then tell Google that they were now, that my actual claim for that account was invalid and theirs was valid. They got in before me. I didn't even know any of this had happened until it was too late and they'd taken over this account. Now, since then, they've done nothing with the account. And in fact, I think it might have been closed down. And it's been completely closed down. Nothing's happening on it at all. Nothing is going on with it. It's just completely closed down. Thankfully, they actually changed the name that's in that actual account. So the name has nothing on it, and it's got nothing in there that identifies me at all, which is great, because that then means that at least it's not there doing bad things on my name since then. But when it comes down to it, I've lost all those memories. I've lost all those pictures. I've lost all that stuff, apart from the stuff that other people had somehow managed to tag me in, and I was able to get hold of those items again. But it did set me up a new account, and I've never been hacked again since 2015 in any way, shape, or form. I certainly learnt my lesson from that one. So what can you do now to protect yourself, and all the things I've done myself to ensure that we don't have these things happening again? So what can you do to protect yourself? Let's start. The first thing to do is to enable multi-factor authentication. Now, the multi-factor authentication happens, I guess, when you're talking about things like using a phone number that's current, as opposed to a lot of us who have old phone numbers that we cannot verify still stuck in there. Second email address. So often things like Facebook allow you to associate a second email address with your login in case you can't get hold of the original one. And then there's things like the authenticator apps. So authenticator apps like Google Authenticator, Facebook I think Facebook got one. Microsoft's definitely got one. LastPass has one. Most security things have these things, and they don't actually have access to anything of yours except that you connect your login details through to an authenticator app, and then it says, okay, you need to know what this 6 numbers is the authenticator app has put up. You put the 6 numbers in and it lets you into your account. Now, when it comes to your current mobile number, that is a very good thing to have. A second mobile number, even better. But a current mobile number means that at least if there is anything that changed on your account, if someone from out of your normal region attempts to access your account, you can still be notified that that's happening and then immediately shut that down. If there's a second email address and you can't get hold of your first email address, at least you see alerts that will come up. Hey, there's been a suspicious attempt to log in, or there's somebody's logged into your account from Romania. You can see that definitely wasn't me, therefore I need to jump in and do something about that now. But your authenticator apps are so secure and so separated from everything that hackers can ever get hold of, because it's actually on one phone that only you can hold. So they would have to get hold of your phone, get into your phone, which is going to be really hard considering they don't have the same face. If you're using Face ID, they may not know your code. Or there's always, the silly things that Samsung still allow you to do with it, like a shape that you've got to go like a Z pattern across the dots. That kind of pattern is just about always that everyone does a Z. That's almost the most common way that people do it is a Z. Now it's so easy to get in those phones. So they have to then have access to your phone, have the username and password to get into your stuff, also be able to get into the Authenticator app and know that you're using it. And they'd have to have too many things go right for them in order to make this work, that the chances of them actually getting through are extremely, extremely slim. It's just never going to happen. So an example here in this movie I'm going to show you is how you make changes to your security stuff in Facebook. So you go to your settings, and then in your settings, you'll see what you're connected to as far as your different contact accounts. You can go to your security and login information, which just shows you where you're logged in, what things are logged in, where you can change your password or save your login information using two-factor authentication, which everybody should absolutely do. I certainly do it. And then you can search for all the different things that are in your current Facebook information. So I'd really, really would recommend, so you're not seeing anything personal in my then, you can't read any passwords or any of that, but you can see email addresses, which is fine. Those email addresses are completely public anyway. So that way you can ensure that people can't get into your stuff just by simply guessing a username and password. What you want to do is put an extra layer on top of that. So that's called, and I'll stop the video when it gets to the point where it actually shares it. But as we go into, again, those settings, into our settings and privacy, into settings, and then over to, we look at our general account settings, then we're going to pop over to security and login. And in here is where you're going to see things like changing your password, and I'll just stop the video, using two-factor authentication. So this is where it asks for a code if it attempted login from an unrecognized device or browser happens. Now, for me, that happens both through my phone and through an authenticator app, which is Google Authenticator. So those things are really, really important to keep yourself completely safe. Of course, though, that's not the only thing that happens, because you've got Facebook pages, and Facebook pages may have more than just the one person who is involved with it. And when there's more than one person involved with it, then you have the issue that not only do certain people have access to your page, but they also have to have their security settings to the same level that you do. So the more admins you have, I'll tell you now, the more risk you're going to have. The more admins, the more risk. Only has to, like a hacker doesn't have to get into everyone to cause havoc. They only have to get into one person to cause havoc with your Facebook page. Only one access has to be gotten into, so they can boot all of you out of being admins. So it could be you, your personal assistant, your virtual assistant, the people who work with you, your colleagues, anyone like that. Any of those people could be then able to get into the Facebook page and then start booting everybody out, because remember, that person has access to that person's password. So the hacker has complete access to everything that that person has, even to your Facebook page. And it may be your Facebook page that you own, but they are booting everybody out as admin. Now, the only way around that is to make sure that your business owns that, and only you have access to your business manager. But then when you add admin access to your business manager, so it gets deeper and deeper again, then your providing another way for people to get in there and cause problems for you. Now, Facebook, despite how much you might think your rights are being violated and that, it's not fair and all that sort of thing, Facebook will not enter into any conversations or any kinds of spats or disputes about who owns a page and who should have access to a page. And I've been kicked out of a page because of this particular person who has come from Venezuela and booted me out of my page. The issue there, of course, is that you feel like you should be in control, but you're not. You feel like you should be able to access these things, but you're not able to access them. The problem is that's not Facebook's problem. That's not Facebook's fault. It's your fault. In fact, 100% of the blame for your account being hacked is with you or the person who they hacked through, because they use your legitimate username and password to get in. Now, if they had a legitimate username and password, but they also didn't have your mobile phone or access to a second email account, or they didn't have access to your Authenticator account or Authenticator app, but they could only get in through username and password, you've still got a chance to be able to block them and stop them from getting in. Particularly if I log into Facebook, it's really annoying because I have to go username, password, and then it says, okay, you've got to check with your Authenticator app on your phone, what's the code before I can get in. Yes, it's annoying. And I do it for my email, I do it for LinkedIn, I do it for every single thing on my computer. But once you've done it enough times, it becomes just a part of your routine. It's a part of what you do. You can have Authenticator app on more than one mobile phone. So if I take only one of my mobiles out of the three of them along with me, I then at least have access to everything I need to have access to. But it's still 100% your fault, not Facebook's, not Google's, if they can get in by guessing your username and password. It's because your username and password are either very common, easily socially engineered, or being surfaced in some kind of hacking or some kind of data breach somewhere else. Not great news, I know, particularly if you've actually been hacked before. And look, I can completely sympathize because I have been. I know how difficult and how horrible this is. And all you can do is just pick it up and start again. I certainly had to do it with my ads account on Facebook, which in 2018 wasn't hacked, but I actually got restricted from advertising on that literally 30 minutes before I was due to present an advertising on Facebook workshop in front of 72 people. So it certainly caused me some issues with that. Not something I really wanted to remember that well. It wasn't the most glorious start to my workshop career, but it happened and I got through it. You can too. You can rebuild your business even if it has been hacked, and it's so dependent upon Facebook. In my case, to get into advertising again, it wasn't a hacking thing again. It was my own fault for advertising something that was outside of the terms of service and outside of the community standards. Not that I thought it was at the time, but turns out it was. Then I had to start a new profile all over again. And then I had to start get into my old profile, which I still had access to, but give myself access to add as admin to all those pages, kick out the old profile and just do everything under this new profile with new ad accounts, new business managers. It was a hassle, particularly because it didn't just affect me, it affected over 100 of my clients that I was managing Facebook ads for at the time too. Bloody annoying, I tell you what. It was just a horrible experience. So moving forward, your action plan from today has to be, number one, in your email, change your email password. Please just do it. It will not hurt you to do it. Add your current mobile number for verification once you're in there. If you're in Gmail or Outlook or whatever you're using that somehow uses a verification process for resetting your password, add your current mobile number. We change mobile numbers here and there. We might have worked for someone and we did it all through our work mobile. We don't have access to the work mobile anymore. So you've got to make sure that that particular email provider has full access to your current mobile number, not your old one. Add an authenticator app for verification, Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, LastPass Authenticator, Nord Authenticator. All of them are good. None of them are not trusted because they don't actually have access to anything. So please do try to, at some point, get an authenticator app and link that as the second factor of authentication. It is better than a mobile phone, but having both the mobile phone and the authenticator app on that phone makes you triple the amount of secure, and that's what you want. Go to Facebook and change your Facebook password. I know it seems like a hassle because then you have to log in all over again, but that is going to be just what you're not going to regret ever changing a password. You only regret not changing a password. Add your current mobile number again into Facebook to make sure it's got your current mobile, not the one you had in 2008 when you first set it up. It's kind of a shock, I know. Add an authenticator app for your verification as well, where it has that, when we showed that screenshot of the going through the back of my security settings, that had a place for second factor authentication. You can have an authenticator app or you can have mobile phone. I chose authenticator app because it's that much more secure again. If it's Instagram, change your Insta password, change your mobile number for verification, use the authenticator app. Again, do that for Instagram, and even then go forward and do that for LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just this place which so much damage can be done to your reputation as a business owner, as an employee. It just has so much writing up for your professional image. If someone was to hack in there and start posting stuff like, join my multi-level marketing thing, or come and buy these dodgy things from this offshore Chinese drop shipping firm that you had nothing to do with, it's going to look terrible on your reputation. And it's really hard to get rid of these old hacked accounts in LinkedIn. They're going to hang around and they're going to be the first thing that people look for when they're looking for you, even if you set up a new account for them to get to you from. Then Facebook again, when it comes to having pages and groups, make sure your page and group admins are following all these same steps as you have to follow. Make sure that there's an authenticator app that's mandatory to them, not just a mobile phone number or an email address. They will, if they want access to your page as an admin, they have to prove to you that they have set up their security settings to be as tight as yours. It sounds like a hassle, but trust me, this is so important. If there's like literally thousands of Australian businesses who have lost access to their Facebook pages and to that $172 million worth of lost revenue just in Australia in small businesses alone each year, then there's a reason why you should have to do this. You need to do it simply so you can ensure that people can't hack you and you've got some sort of backup in place. Check with the people who have access to your business manager, check with the people who have access to your group admin, your page admin, to make sure they cannot get in and be hacked and then get like wiping out your access so you can never get in there again. So if you have been hacked, if this has happened to you before, there's some things you can do to try. So first of all, in Facebook, they've got their hacked page, so really easy to get to. It happens so often, they've got a page for it, facebook.com/hacked. That's where you start with in case you think you've been hacked. Google has a bit of a harder one to get to, but if you just Google hacked Google account, it will take you through to a result that takes you to this particular page. So you don't necessarily need to go to that particular page. Just do a Google search, it'll take you there. And on top of that, go to cyber.gov.au, which is the Australian Cyber Security Centre's home of all things to do with cybersecurity at the federal level. And it's got an opportunity for you there to report cybercrime. And our cybercrime includes hacked Facebook accounts. It does include hacked email accounts. So you can report that to the federal police, who then will follow up either with your local police in the Northern Territory, Western Australia or Queensland to make sure that they are aware of this and that you can then, look, it may not result in anything, and in most cases it doesn't. They cannot find the people and they're offshore anyway, so they're not going to be able to be caught or dealt with in any kind of way within Australia. But at least if you put that report out there, it allows other people to not be reported. It lets them know, here's how many people are being reported. This is where we need to put our resources to make sure people don't get it. In fact, the Australian Cyber Security Centre have done a lot of work in conjunction with the ASBAS Digital Solutions Program to help get messages like today's one from me out to small businesses just like you. Well, I said this was going to be a nice brief one. We've got in under the 45-minute mark. That's great, isn't it? So you don't have to wait for a whole hour. We all get a 15-minute early mark. My name's Dante St James. You can contact me at dante@clickstarter.com.au, which is my business, or you can just stalk me away on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Please connect with me on any of those. Probably not Facebook as a friend, but Facebook page. You can follow that and see all these kind of things I've been producing, all the different webinars, any sort of links and tips and tricks that I can put in there as well. In the meantime, though, I thank you so much for joining me and taking a bit of time out of your business to spend time working on your business. I said, my name is Dante St James, and I hope to see you in the next one of these coming up tomorrow.